Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550. And our website can be found at lifecoachdanamflag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our seventh episode of season 12, a special guest and neonatologist, Susan Lenders. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Susan, the floor is yours.
Dr. Dan, thank you for the invitation. I practiced medicine in the neonatal ICU for 34 years. I had a wonderful career. I also raised 3 children. I was married to another physician, so we had busy lives. But I managed to, over the decades, learn how to take care of myself, work full-time as a physician, and be a good enough mother. Yeah, I love that term because we all start out trying to be perfect mothers. We all do. Regular moms, physician moms, lawyer moms. We just think we're going to do it perfectly. And then when we have our children, reality sets in and they throw so many curveballs at us. I feel like I spent the first 7 years of my career, when my 3 children were born, learning to be at work when I was at work and be a mom at home when I wasn't at work. And that takes some time to get used to. Each child is different. Each child brings up different strengths in us, sometimes different weaknesses. And so I like to talk with other working moms, especially about how difficult it is to be a working mother. If you work full time, you are carrying a big load. You are worried about the household chores, the meals on the table, the soccer coach, the first grade teacher, the orthodontist, the lady next door, the PTA president who wants to help you with a fundraiser. And then there's your job. Oh, and I forgot your husband or your partner. And so we all struggle so much when we have our kids to sort of learn how to balance it all. I think it's more of a balancing act myself. It's more like juggling. You throw things up and some things work, other things don't. But Dr. Dan, I've been really worried about working mothers. I'm hearing from them on social media and reading blogs that they are struggling and they are feeling burnout.
Agreed.
You must be hearing about this in your practice.
Every single day, actually, Susan. And, as to reiterate a little thing that you said earlier, when you have kids, unfortunately, they don't come with a manual.
Right.
We don't know what personality one will have versus the other. So it's not just struggling about the quantity of kids that you have, but also the different personality, different behaviors. I mean, some of them may deal with ADD or whatever it is. So it's as you said, it's a juggling act. And
Yes.
mothers, or especially working mothers, unfortunately, they don't know how to either balance work, life, children, family. They don't know how to do all that. And sometimes when they do it, they end up burnt out, depressed, anxious, and all the mental illness issues come and kicks in.
Well, there are ways to identify stress related to your work and your children. And I think there are ways to identify burnout before you get crispy. If you don't like your job, if you hate your manager, if a certain coworker drives you crazy, if things at work just fall apart and you're not there, and then you feel responsible, those are signs that you have work-related burnout. And that means that you need to talk to your mentor, a coach, a therapist, your best friend. You need to talk to somebody about whether or not that job is right for you, your partner, your husband, of course. But working mother burnout is not just job burnout. Sometimes it is just being fed up with being a mom.
Mhm.
My third one had dyslexia, and I was just at a point fed up with doing phonics and spelling and all the things that she needed. We used all of these learning tools and aids, and it was so repetitive. And it didn't bother me if I wasn't stressed out. But if my job had me stressed out, then I was more likely to be grouchy with her or yell at her. When we allow our stress from work to carry over into the home, when we yell at our children, when we really can't stand their rambunctious behavior, those are signs that we're overly stressed.
Okay.
When we resent our husbands, I'll never forget a time in my midlife when my husband had a wonderful job, brand new job, full promotion, big raise, and my job was just okay. And of course, I was chasing around 3 young children, and I began to resent him. He was having such a good time. I was struggling so much. And we had a lot of imbalance in our marriage. It was a difficult time. So the other thing working moms need to remember is that your relationship also weighs in. Everything you do, everything you're juggling has to do with your feelings about it, whether it's work, whether it's a child who's challenging, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your family of origin, if they're giving you a hard time. I think moms can learn to look for some of the signs of working mom burnout, and they can learn how to take care of themselves. It's hard and we don't like to do it, but I know it can be done because I did it.
But here's the challenge, Susan. If we go back to what you said about if, let's say, is stress-related burnout, and then mothers or working mothers, they have to deal with a very toxic employer or a very toxic, like colleague, whatever it is. They don't. Some of them don't have really much the option to be able to just leave the job because they
Right,
have family to raise, or especially if they're single mothers, which then the challenge is exacerbated because they
right.
partner to be able to help them with financially, that is. So in all of this, you have to kind of like include so many external factors that can contribute or accelerate the burning, the burnout, the stress factor, which is you don't really have much choice. And because you don't have much choices, then you overstress because there's no exit. So
Right.
what kind of strategies do you offer to working mothers to go around that? And then let's not even add the postpartum depression. That's
Oh, wow. That's a whole nother
a
conversation.
whole not, yeah, a whole not.
Dr. Dan, I think that single mothers are saints. I mean, they have to call in help when they need it. They don't have a partner or spouse nearby. They've got to use family, whether those relationships are good or not. They depend on their friends. And sometimes that is really difficult for women. If you're trapped in a job you don't like, you've got to at least, I believe, talk to your manager. Your manager or your director has to know how you feel about being part of his or her team,
Okay.
especially if you're really uh, fixed to that job, if you really can't go anywhere else. You don't have to be miserable. You can ask for support. And I think that's what a work mentor helps you with. Somebody in the workplace that's 5 or 10 years older than you that can give you some pointers, can point you in the right direction, can give you some advice about how to handle difficult situations. The main things that I think working mothers have a hard time learning is we all talk about priorities. We all write out our priorities. And our children are on the list, and our partner, and our family, and our friends, and our job. So often, working mothers do not put themselves on the top of their list.
Mhm.
I mean, you are important to your success. When I learned in my 40s that I had to exercise at least 2 or 3 days a week, that I had to get outside and take a walk in nature after I had been on call for 12 or 24 hours, that I had to take naps, that I had to get in the bubble bath with my two daughters. I learned slowly but surely. I think I had friends who said, "You're not taking care of yourself." I learned how to take care of myself. I wasn't very good at meditation, but I did keep a gratitude journal. I loved writing letters, and that was a great way to use my right brain to write about what I was feeling and to kind of put my worries from work, all those things we carry in our left brain, aside. I did use my friendship support system. If I had not had other women physicians having babies and being mothers at the same time, I would have drowned. And we all have friends at work. We all have friends in our neighborhood. We've got to talk to them, use them for support, emotional support, not just babysitting in a crisis. But everybody I talk to feels the same way. When they're struggling, when they're burnout, they feel alone. I know you hear it in therapy. I just do not think we are alone. I think we just need to ask for help. It's not that simple, but that is a big, big first step.
But what about, okay, so when we have families in certain scenarios, Suzanne, where they move to another city because they have to go and get a new job, okay? So they know no one. So how do you go around asking for help when there's really no one that you know, Suzanne? And the thing is, it can be challenging because you just don't want to ask strangers to help
Right,
babysit when you don't really know them and you don't really trust them to be with your kids. So how does
exactly.
it take to be able to start searching for a good, healthy circle of friends?
I did that by getting to know other mothers at the school or at the preschool. I went over and got to know a neighbor or two. There was one I hated and one I loved. I also went to church. I'm very old fashioned. I went to church. I took my kids to church, and I got to know people in my Sunday school class. I had friends at work. So even if you're stuck at work, there's got to be somebody at work you can talk to.
Okay.
And if you live in any kind of neighborhood, whether it's an apartment house or the suburbs, there's somebody around that you can get to know. I think talking to other moms at school is a great way to get some support, ask some questions. Hey, what do you do about this? How did you handle that? I felt like some of the stay-at-home moms were perfect mothers, that I was always struggling and rushing to get to the school for events. And they were always there with their nails polished and their hair fixed. And I felt so ragged. And one of them I got to know, and actually she turned out to be just as ragged as me because we both overextended ourselves. She had way more free time than I did, but she filled it up with unnecessary volunteering and running the PTA and all this stuff at the school. And when we both cut back on some of our responsibilities and got to know each other, she was just like me. She just wanted to be a good enough mother.
Okay, so now define, Susan, which may be a universal question. What is a good enough mother? I mean, your kids, when they're young, they don't judge you. They love you no matter what. It's unconditional. So it's not
Right.
based on what you offer them. It's based on how they get back to, or they show the love back to you. So when is the age of the kids that you could consider yourself good mother or bad one, or no, basically indifferent one. I mean, there's so many different definition to it.
I'm guilty of working way too much the first decade of my motherhood.
Okay.
And so I don't think I felt like a good enough mother until my kids were all elementary, middle school, and high school. My definition of a good enough mother is one who allows herself to work outside the home
Mhm.
because she's fulfilled in her work.
Okay.
She may have to work, but she's fulfilled in her work. There's some worth to it, and that gives her satisfaction in herself. And she's also a mother. A good enough mother allows herself to miss some things. I
Okay.
missed some milestones. I missed a play at the school. And my kids would say, Mom, I really wish you could be there for everything. I'd say, honey, I'm sorry, I had a really sick baby that day and I couldn't show up. And I feel like when I explained to them what I was working on and that I couldn't get away, that they had some inkling of understanding.
Okay.
So a good enough mother gives herself a break. She allows herself to be gone some of the time to do what she wants to do or likes to do. And when she's home, she's a mother doing all the things that mothers do. And so it's an adjustment learning to be a good enough mother. It's almost giving yourself a little grace, giving yourself a little forgiveness for not being perfect. That's what the definition felt like to me. And now my kids are all grown, they're all young adults, and I ask them about it, and they say, well, you weren't around very much, but you were around plenty, and we learned to be very independent. And when things were really tough, you were there. So their sense was that I could manage to be there for the most important things, but for not everything.
But here's the psychological challenge, Susan, and tell me if I'm wrong or right. Nowadays, we see a lot of mothers either stay at home or not, overextend their kids with so many after school activities such as soccer or music or piano lesson and all. So they deliberately put this upon themselves, the mothers that is, to be able to spread themselves so thin with their kids by smashing them with 1,000 activities after school. The kids are exhausted. When they're exhausted, they behave, like I would say,
Poor,
yes,
right?
poorly. So that put additional stress on the mother. That puts additional stress on the couple. So it's like a bouncing back effect. It's
It
the
is.
cause and effect, and it's nonstop because it just wires back like a loop.
Modern millennial moms have gotten the message from somewhere that their children need to be exposed to every activity or every sport. I really disagree. I let my kids do two things.
Mhm.
So I had three kids. They did two things. That was 6 days a week at the most. And I did not let them start something new if they were still in something else. We know that overextension of children makes them fussy, makes them stressed, gives them tension. They don't learn or study as well. And sometimes they don't enjoy the activities that mom wants them to be in. I know some of your listeners have heard about helicopter moms
Yes.
who put kids in lots of activities and hover to make sure the coach is playing them enough and the teacher is doing enough work with them, calling or emailing the teacher. Nobody did that for me, and probably no one did that for you. When we were young, our parents taught us that if we wanted to do something, we should have at it.
Correct.
One or two activities a week. And when we failed, our parents did not bail us out. They said,
Health.
failing is part of life. It's learning how to get better. It's learning how to cope. It's learning how to adapt. And so I think helicopter moms not only put their kids in too many activities and then interfere in the activities, but they also do not allow their children to fail. And I don't think helicopter moms are good enough mothers. I don't, there's another term, tiger mom, out there where you just
Terms, yes.
make sure your children are in all these things and music and arts and dance. It's too much. Most children can't tolerate that much extracurricular activity. And so, my opinion as a pediatrician and as an experienced mother is that tiger moms and helicopter moms just stress kids out.
I see. Now, in your practice, when you deal with parents, and do they come to you with how to manage their time with work or with even stay-at-home mom, how to be able to keep themselves mentally sane throughout this process, or at least until the kids goes to kindergarten? Because the first 2 or 3 years before pre-K, they're at home or daycare, so they have to go to work. They have to run back home, go pick up the kid, bring them to their house, then cook dinner and make sure that they're bathed, they're put to sleep, brush teeth, etc. But
Right.
now society has become so demanding upon, regardless of mothers or fathers. It doesn't matter if you have a kid or you don't have kids, with work, with obligations, and so on and so forth. So no wonder so many people are seeking therapy. Is because
Yes.
something that they just cannot fathom how much obligation they have towards